Well, welcome to Black Men Speak, a podcast that highlights ordinary Black men doing extraordinary things. I am your host, Keith Dent, and we are actually doing, I guess, if you want to call it a redo or a encore presentation, because a couple of weeks ago, my guest, we had him on, and it was during a horrific rainstorm here in the Northeast, and it caused a little challenges. So we had a few. We were really getting going, and before you knew it, it just stopped in the middle. And hey, that's I guess if you want to say, hey, that's show business. I get you can't do that in comedy, otherwise you would get the hook really fast, or and if you're at the Apollo, who knows, you might lose some stuff. But I am your host, Keith Dent, and it's great to be here. And this is a new thing for me. I usually do our shows on the weekend, but we have our show during the week, and that's exciting, really exciting stuff. So today, as we're going to, our guest was graciously able to come back, and that's the power of Georgetown and being an alum. We look out for each other, and so I was glad he's was able to be on tonight. And his name is Isaiah Jones. He's a comedy, touring, and live events agent for the United Talent Agency in the great New York City. But he hails from Dinwiddie, Virginia. And we got into that a little bit, and we're going to get back into it. But we're going to talk about his journey from Dinwiddie, Virginia to Georgetown University, how that all came about. We're going to talk about his passion for music, primarily being a percussionist, and we're going to talk about just his career journey. He started out at the Neo Elite, and that was a DMV based content and media production company. We'll highlight that, how he served as a brand manager and speaking agent for Marcus Johnson, who is an esteemed international jazz pianist. And then we'll really, want to get into his being a agent for comedians, because I may have some jokes that I think may be some killers, and hey, you know you need to maximize your income. So if I can do a couple local circuits here in the in the tri-state area, hey, you just never know. So Isaiah, what's up, brother? How you doing? Welcome to Black Men Speak podcast.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate you accommodating.
Of course, hey, of course. I was glad you're able to come back, and the weather's just been beautiful the past few days, so I do not anticipate any issues or anything like that. And if not, hey, we'll just have to talk to our sponsors here and find out what's going on. So we're just gonna go ahead and go all the way back, especially we might have new listeners. So you're from Dinwiddie, Virginia, and so what was it like growing up there?
Yeah, man. Like we started to talk about, right? It's a small town. Everybody kind of knows each other. Like after elementary school, you go into middle school with everyone in town, and you go into high school with everybody in town, and everybody kind of knows each other's brothers, sisters, moms, sees each other at the homecoming games, etc. So I was there going to all throughout middle school, and had a decision to either continue on like that path that a lot of people were going on and going to our the high school where we all would convene and know each other, or taking a path and exploring another education, which was at the governor's school in Petersburg, Virginia. So, which is next door to Dinwiddie, and I took that route, and that's kind of where my kind of love for music, my education for music, my passion for music, really started to sprout and grow wings. So I was happy about that decision, but I always tell people it's like I'm from Dinwiddie. It's rural. It's literally like the Confederate South. You can still see parts of it. I lived across the battlefield from literally from the Civil War. So I didn't realize how much that affected me in my life until probably I got to Georgetown and afterwards, now that I look back
Mm,
at everything. So, we may get into that, but, I love home. It's the opposite of New York. I
Right,
hadn't
right.
no, I hadn't ridden a city bus even until I got to DC. So to be here in a big city is definitely a stark difference. So it's always good to go home, get some open space, some fresh air, and see the stars.
Right, right. And I didn't realize the transition because I actually, transitioned to a different high school, just moving from a completely different state. So was that a challenge going from, where you knew everybody and then all of a sudden you were thrown into a high school where you were completely brand new?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a challenge, right? It's especially for challenge for people who aren't necessarily, given the gift of gab and are outgoing, right, and making friends and being in new spaces. I think that I'm probably in the middle. Like when I have to be, I can be outgoing,
Mhm.
but for the most part, I'm pretty reserved. And I took that opportunity, and I should say, like I didn't get in on the first go round. They rejected me. you know,
Oh, wow. Okay. And that
I
was
was
it's because it's a charter school or you had to
yeah,
test
yeah.
it.
It's just yeah, somewhat of a charter slash magnet school. You got to test in. You have to audition, right? I came in as a music major, so instrumental music
Oh,
major. So you had to do the scales, and you had to sight read and all these things. And so I didn't make it. And every district, every kind of county has a specific amount that they can send. I think Dinwiddie had 4 or 6, and I didn't make the cut. So,
mm,
so they called me later on afterwards, and a spot had opened up. I guess someone for some reason couldn't go and couldn't attend, so they gave it to me. And I made the best of the opportunity. I was excited about it. I don't think that being in a new space really inhibited me on anything. I think if anything, it was encouraging, it was inspiring, right? So yeah, I was happy about the opportunity.
okay, okay. So, percussion or being a percussionist has been a passion for yours for a long time. And how did that actually come about?
6th grade, I got my name drew out of a hat, and it was up from there. Electives. You're either doing choir, or you're doing art, or you're doing music and or slash band. And so everybody wanted to be on the drum line and band. It was probably about 20 hands that raised, and they could only take maybe 7 or 8 out of each class. And I think I was the second name that got drawn. And
Okay,
then, after a while, just constant practice and encouragement from my teachers. It really continued me on that journey of just like finding like that niche, like that thing I wanted to do, and like I wanted to put my time in, and it ended up being drums, and that led from concert band to marching band and playing drum set in the pit to being on cymbals to being a snare drum and the actual like drum line leader for a year.
okay.
And then obviously at the governor's school it was classical, it was show choir, it was jazz band. I mean, so much fun, right? Just like
Wow,
exploring
okay.
the world of percussion, just from getting your name drawn out of a hat and just going with the flow and what was working.
Okay. And so you that's wonderful. And you've had a passion for, I guess, entertainment for a very long time, since 6th grade.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think that it was really just music, right? And like 6th to 8th grade, and then by the
Okay.
time we got to ninth and 10th, when I was at the governor's school, I mean, that I don't. I think if you people have ever seen Victorious, which was I think a Nickelodeon show or a Disney show,
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
like it was about a school that had all these gifted and talented students who were singing and dancing and playing instruments, and I felt like that school was like where I went. Like it was just super talented individuals in their own right. Whether they were just super great at technology, it was a arts and technology school. So
Okay.
or they were vocal majors, or they were dancers, or they were theater majors, or they were visual arts majors, or literary arts, right? They were just amazing at the pen. I started to fall in love with other areas of entertainment in the arts world through that school. And then
Okay.
I think that was that born, that kind of bug in me to kind of like explore outside of what I was doing. I started acting, I started dancing in high school, like all those things. And so that's why I take my position now that I have entertainment so seriously because it was always something that I like loved to just be a consumer of and educate myself about.
So this was like the southern version of fame.
Yeah, right, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
They're singing and dancing in the halls at like 8 a.m. and
Uh-huh.
you know who's on here. But if there were any students that went back to high school with me, then they can vouch for that. Some liked
Okay.
it, some didn't.
Okay. I got it. I got it. So then, so I would think that naturally you might flow into a HBCU. I know you were pretty close to Virginia State, and of course, with drumline, that's a HBCU staple, and so they're probably more celebrities than like the football team. So, what led you to actually going a different route and going to Georgetown?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was a few parts, right? My
Okay.
mom didn't want me to apply to any Virginia schools, and mind you, she graduated from Virginia State, so
Mm,
HBCU. And she's always been pushing me, right? And it was always about what was the best, right? You worked hard for 4 years, right? Like you always want the best for yourself. Others want the same for you. So that was the conversation. So the no
okay.
Virginia school got applied to. There was no wasting time with that. However, like leaving the nest, it didn't look like moving 6 hours away, right? It was applying to those schools, but it was also like what was still kind of close to home, and it was Georgetown, it was Howard. I got into
Okay.
Howard, I got into
You
Georgetown,
got into Howard, right? So okay, so they did have kind of the band and everything.
and that's what I thought, right? I thought it was going to be a big, as much as education, those goals were important. It was also about social and continuing on this music journey. And I was always like loving what I was seeing on Drumline the movie, right? Like everybody. So it's like what is that experience, right? On like a bigger level, like leaving high school. Right, because we had a drum line that danced and that really got down like that. So like if you go to Howard, one of the biggest and most known HBCUs with a great band, I wanted that experience. And then after a while, you know, Georgetown came with the money, said we'll give you a full ride. I was like, well, that's kind of hard to beat. And Howard's down.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Howard,
that's kind of hard to turn up.
right, and Howard's down the street. So
Right.
like I said, we take that G2 and go to those gates. We get to when we can. So it worked out.
Okay. Oh, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean, if you're if Georgetown's going to provide you with a full scholarship, it's hard to say. It's hard to say no, and you can always, yeah, like you said, you can always take the G2 and practice over there. Take the drums over there. But so you get into to Georgetown, and when did you graduate? What year?
2016.
2016. Okay. And so what was your experience like, when you once you went through the gates at 37th and O? How did it resonate with you?
Uh, it was a big shock because I think it was the first time I felt superbly academically challenged. Like it was like the classes were like that I was taking at the time, right? I was speaking about my educational goals at the time. So when I entered, I was a physics major. I was taking like physics
Mm,
courses. I was
okay.
taking math courses and thinking I was going to be like a mechanical engineer. I was going to maybe later down the road do IP law, like all these dreams and what I thought would be my future. And it felt like a slap in the face when I actually got in, and a walk into reality when I actually entered those classrooms and didn't feel as prepared. I didn't feel like I felt like a lot of I was putting my best foot forward, and it wasn't amounting to what it used to amount to.
Mm, mhm.
So that part was challenging, right? And then there's the part about being in a space where people aren't used to interacting with people that look like you. They're not saying the right things. They're not doing the right things. They make wrong assumptions.
Mm, mhm.
So and even going through mixed schools and being from where I'm from, you would expect maybe I've seen some of that or experienced some of that, but I hadn't to that point.
Right. And so what sport did they think you played?
I don't recall them ever maybe even mentioning a sport, right?
Okay.
Right. But, yeah, but like it's like it was always a athletic scholarship and not merit scholarship. slash
Okay.
academic, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and that can be a little troubling. And I know when got their freshman year, um, I felt like I, had to prove myself out the gate, and so
Hmm.
I sacrificed a lot of the going outs, and even though I did, but I know there were nights where I felt I had to study to justify, my acceptance and things like that. So I don't know if you
Hmm.
kind of felt that same pressure as well.
No, yeah, I think a lot of us did. I think a lot of us, felt we were the representation in the class for the whole Black community at Georgetown, and that's a and while it sounds crazy, it's a very much a real feeling, right? It's sitting there and feeling like you have to speak for everyone, think for everyone, and be the voice for something that maybe everybody in the room can't specifically speak to because it's not their experience, but at the same time may not be the experience of your own as well. So
Mm,
it's hard on multiple fronts.
right,
I
right.
did not have a good first semester. It was like the first time I was really seeing like bad grades. I mean, I,
Mm,
I mean, I bounced back. It was like a full 180 the next semester. I got my act together, but it was more so I didn't set myself up for success for what found myself to be intellectually curious about. The workloads too much, like all these things that they say not to do, like I did,
right,
and and I failed, in my own eyes, and took a good hard look at the situation and came back with a different head on my shoulders and and the old me, and from there everything worked out. I changed majors. The sociology major. I double minored in music and African American studies. So again, kept on the music path, and and then I think we'll get into that too.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like seeing a D on your report card. I remember seeing a couple of times when I was like, "Oh, I'm going to end up going to the army." I'm like, "This is crazy," but But I applaud you from actually that you actually assessed really what you wanted to do, and you made the changes as opposed to I'm going to stick to this and make this work. But it really wasn't for you, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then that kind of led to, I guess, something that you actually co-founded, and that was the GU University Collegiate 100.
Hmm.
So what was that, and why did you feel you needed to create that organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the time you kind of stepped up to Georgetown, at least for me and a lot of my other friends, it was about finding community. It was about you're looking for belongingness, and for Black men in particular, it felt like we had our spaces here and there. It felt like we were trying to ad hoc those spaces, and me, my roommate at the time, but my freshman roommate, Harrison Williams, and several other Black men on campus, we were thinking about why don't we actually make something that's actually university supported, right? The Collegiate 100 is the collegiate chapter of the 100 Black men. Harris at the time had a relationship, so we started to talk to them about chartering one on campus. We found an advisor. We found pretty much a chartering membership board,
Hmm.
and felt like we came out the gate swinging. But it was all born out of we need something for us. We need something that we feel we can petition the university for when it comes to funding, when it comes to having things on campus that are meaningful, impactful. I remember we hosted the Barbershop 3 screening down at the Georgetown Theater, and had Malcolm Lee come and
Okay.
give a Q&A, and I was moderating the Q&A, and definitely one of the highlights of my Georgetown career, helping put that on. And that's just one of the things where we felt like having something actually chartered on campus and being able to like submit proposals for funding and using the
Hmm.
university money to support what and provide a space for us that really should be there already was the way to go. So that's what the Collegiate 100 was.
That's awesome. And then shout out to Malcolm Lee, fellow
Yeah.
GU alum. So that's awesome. But I have just a fascinating question. So do you, because we always talk about this. I know I graduated a lot longer ago, but
Right.
is it because the camaraderie wasn't natural at Georgetown, just between Black men and women, or just in general? or did you feel that you just wanted to try to provide more opportunities to bring in, with the resources to bring in different things?
Uh, I mean, definitely the latter, right? But I think even regarding camaraderie, right? I mean, people say all the time, we're not a monolith. Like there's different personalities within each and every one of us, and like who we click with, right? And like we still
Hmm.
all come from varying backgrounds and different socioeconomic, statuses and realities. And so even coming into Georgetown and throwing that in the mix, you still have different tribes you may actually gravitate towards, but not. Oh, I'm losing light over here. I'll get that on in a second. But to answer your question, it was trying to solve for X, right, and make
Okay.
sure we actually had something to um a space of ourselves, right? There was the Black Student Alliance, there was the African Society of Georgetown, there was the CCC, and those are spaces that we felt we did belong in, depending on
Right.
what your ethnicity is, etc. But then we needed something that spoke to the social aspect and the cultural aspect that Black men felt you were experiencing at Georgetown, and so hopefully it did some good while we were there and while it was active.
Okay. And that's fascinating, and I think it's just based on the times, because back in the late 80s, early 90s, we did have that monolith, and we had probably, and I know I'm not, hopefully nobody's watching them get mad, but we had probably had three groups. We had the Black Student Alliance, we had the NAACP, and we had the athletes, and we had, I know we had a Black dance group and Black theater ensemble, and that was pretty much it. But
Hmm.
everything was really led just with a Black focus, and not a branching of different factions of Blackness. So the fact that you were able to that you saw a need and try to bring that to the forefront for supporting Black men is actually quite cool. So and then kind of lastly, or not lastly, but just to talk about the world GU World Percussion, and I think if I
Hmm.
got that right,
Yep.
and you were a main part of that. And how did that shape your kind of the next part of your journey and what you want to do in life?
Yeah, it's pretty special because again, I was thinking about going to Howard, and that music journey was going to be on trying out for the band and being on the drum line, etc. And the music journey at Georgetown was much different because I didn't feel connected to to the concert band or the band that played at the games.
Right.
And I went there, I tried it, I sought them out and kind of made the decisions myself, and I took a course that was pretty much teaching world percussion, so Afro-Cuban percussion, percussion instruments from the eastern side of the world, um,
Mm.
and then also like Western instruments as well. So I really like fell in love with learning those instruments of the percussion family, and then I found out we actually had a group on campus that was part of the Department of Performing Arts, called the World Percussion Ensemble, and so I joined it as a member, and then I felt like we could do more. I felt like we were like super talented from just taking people who don't know anything, like who have rhythm just based on you're listening to a song and nodding your head, but outside of
Hmm.
that, teaching them skills to be able to put on a show at the end of each semester in front of their friends and family. I was like, this needs more visibility. Like, we need more opportunities. I think we can be doing more here. It was the first time I looked at music from a business lens, and
Mm.
pretty much created a position for myself, which, to some degree was in the realm of vice president of marketing logistics. I think that's what I called it.
Okay.
So the president at the time like said, sure, like we need help there. So like we branded. I think we got a new logo. There was a process to book us. That I created. There were more on campus opportunities at that point. And performing with dancers and performing at bigger events at Georgetown, just from getting the word out and being more creative about our programming. And then I graduated to actually be the president and the treasurer. Those positions are shared. So then it was looking at the numbers part of everything, and so those like 2 or 3 years, it was actually building a bit of a resume to speak on a very small scale, with a music mind mixed with a business mind, mixed with marketing. Like, how do we, scale up, something that is working, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had witnessed one of your when I was just doing research and saw you one of your YouTube, and yeah, I think, and I'm sure you can help me, but you were playing a box,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, wow, because that was really fascinating because it really kind of felt so, I guess, organic and felt down home, almost like being in, I wouldn't say being in Africa, but it was like I was assuming it came from the roots. But I'd love you to kind of go into that. How was it to kind of take an instrument that's not really mainstream and really make it your own and educate the, I guess, the audience that was there?
Yeah. I mean, to some degree, you kind of meet people, where they're at, and depending on the audience, you can kind of go deeper, you can stay surface level, right? But like as I was learning about these instruments, whether it be the congas or the bongos or the timbales or the cajon, which is the box that you were
Mhm.
talking about, or even the maracas or the cowbell, and how important these instruments are to other cultures that I wasn't as familiar with, or just slightly through friendships, right? And at that point, it was learning it to be at least be able to step into that culture a little bit and use the skill set to be able to bring, shine that light on that specific culture, that event, that time frame, that period, right? Some of these instruments are born out of Latin American countries, some come directly from African countries, right? And so connecting even from that standpoint and putting your hands on an instrument, much different than I used to just use sticks, right?
Mm-mm.
Or mallets, right? But
Right.
putting your hands there, feeling like the rawhide skin, and being able to like make sounds based upon how you were able to really understand the instrument in and of itself, be comfortable with the instrument, like really feel at home with it, and be able to understand sound and what is the capabilities of it are, was kind of what I started to really fall into, like while I was at Georgetown, and I felt created a different type of home for me that I hadn't felt with music before. So, I still even play those instruments while I'm here in New York. And I think that was something that, I loved while at Georgetown when we got the opportunity to play at, the ASG's African Society of Georgetown's like
Hmm.
fashion show, Abisa. And like those were big moments for us. And, or performing with like the Caribbean Culture Circle, because like these instruments are tied to them, right?
Right.
So it's being able to do that. And then, but then also like performing like to the broader Georgetown community, and maybe just like something that's more of a student led organization, that's a welcome back event or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh,
It's,
okay.
there was a variety, of things that you can kind of get into and fall in love with, and you never know kind of somebody's history and what impact like doing something like this has on somebody's
Right.
experience while at the school.
Right. That's just sounds awesome. That really does because just playing, and being able to play with a mixed audience, or even just our African American, brothers and sisters who might not even known some of those instruments, and to help bring kind of the culture together through those events must have been very empowering to do.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So now you get out of school, you've got through your 4 years, and so you have to, get a job. So what was your first job out of school?
I worked at the escape room in Georgetown. Um,
Well, yeah, I actually just walked by there just just this weekend, and I thought of you. So,
yeah, yeah.
and what was that like?
I mean, it was the alternative, right? It wasn't the first thing I was expecting out of Georgetown. But it's also very hard to break into entertainment, right? You put a lot of feelers out, you try. Like I was a 930 club marketing intern, and I did that, senior year, spring, and opportunities come or they don't come, and like that was a good kind of landing zone for the time being. So I was there, literally being a game master. and
Okay.
telling people, walking people through the puzzles and the rooms and putting
Okay.
putting on a character and stuff like that. So I tapped into like my old like high school roots of acting a little bit, and it was fun for the moment,
For what
right?
it was. Okay.
Right. But at the time, I'm still, I went from doing that like every day to then it being a weekend job, and then starting to pretty much work the phones at a cardiology association and talk about continuing education for cardiologists and figure out the language for all of that. And
Right.
that,
Right.
yeah, right. And that 9 to 5, and then doing escape room either right after that job or doing it on the weekends, and while also, like you mentioned, work with Marcus Johnson, who I met while at a Georgetown event he came to speak at. And he liked my hustle. He liked what I wanted to do for my career.
Okay.
He felt like he had a space on his team where I could provide value, and also learn, and then get a chance to kind of be, my own, to some degree, like not my own boss, but start to set the pace for myself, right? So added that to the mix, and then also working like you mentioned Neo Elite, which was also founded by Georgetown alum Zeppelin Tillman, and working alongside him when we produced shows at a Howard Theater, R&B shows, and leaning back on that marketing background and doing digital marketing, show marketing, etc. So it was all those four things
Okay.
at once by the time I was into the fall of 2016.
Wow. So you've always, I guess, been a person that's thrived on doing multiple things. Sounds like.
Yeah, I couldn't focus, man. I couldn't. that's that's why I tell people, like, I couldn't be like a traveling musician when when it came down to it, because I felt like I had put in enough of the hours to be able to do what I had wanted to do. Right, I didn't even want to minor in music when I was at Georgetown at first. I just wanted to play for the fun of it, and learn while I was going. But then I was taking enough classes at that point to might as well put on
Hmm.
my degree. And at some point I was like, I can't practice enough or do it like put enough time into this to think I'm going to leave Georgetown and start a band or be a part of a band and be on the drum,
Mm.
etc.
Hmm.
So I was like,
Right.
I want to be on in like behind the scenes. Like I want to be close to music, but not the musician. Like, what are those jobs that allow me to do that and still be creative at the end of the day? Because I don't let people forget that I'm still a musician at the end of the day. I come from a creative space. So having a job that feels creative and that is creative, was always going to be, the end goal as well.
Oh, interesting. So, that, and this is, I know it's a separate question. So you didn't really get caught in kind of the trappings of being a musician and all the like little perks that come with being a musician, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, but I think because I just never got to that level. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I think hints of it here and there, like while in college,
Uh-huh.
but but it was already made up in my mind that it wasn't going to last like after that.
Okay.
And when you're looking to break into entertainment after freshman year, if you know you're going to get into it, which was me, I think by the time I got into my sophomore year, freshman, and even spring, I was ready to look into entertainment. So you're kind of like looking at all the opportunities start that journey and make
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
connections,
Okay.
because that's how you start to actually make it happen after you graduate. Because outside that,
Right.
like, people are looking for who you know and what you know, and trying to connect all the dots for what you did on campus, and it kind of wasn't leaning me into the direction of what does this music performance route look like. Like
Right.
it just looks like what it looks like right now. It looks like me talking about how much I love and to play music, which actually helped me, right,
Okay.
in my interviews, saying how much I love music and how much like what I listen to, what I like, and why I do it. Because at the end of the day, like, I sit beside the music agents here and
Hmm.
the music department, and so do the comedy folks. We do these things because we love the art form, right?
Okay.
It's important.
Right. And so, because I know you had some internships prior to graduation, right? So, was it a little disheartening that you didn't get something right away? Because I know when I graduated from Georgetown, there was kind of expectations of, yeah, I graduated from Georgetown, I should be able to get a job. But it took me some time as well. So I wonder how you felt, or do you felt it was kind of a natural just progression, and you're glad that you landed the way it did?
Um, well, I'm not. I think everything happens for a reason, right? I wouldn't say I'm
Hmm.
glad the way it landed the way it did. I would have loved to have like started this specific journey like much sooner, right?
Hmm.
There were some difficulties and some struggle buses that were probably for the 6 7 months I was on. But outside of that, right, I knew I made decisions to turn certain avenues down that I probably could have been successful at, procuring after graduation as far as job
Mm.
opportunities. So it
Okay.
wasn't, yeah, so I wasn't so much down about the fact that I didn't have it because I chose almost not to have certain things because I
Okay.
knew it would take me away from the vision that I had for what I wanted to do. And if at any point you feel like you're not putting your everything specifically to this level of a journey within entertainment, then yeah, you may not get there as soon as you could.
Okay. 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 Great. So yeah. So talk about your. You mentioned you worked with Marcus Johnson,
Mhm.
and so what was that like? I mean, because now you're really behind the scenes, you're really in the mix, which is a whole different avenue. Because you're really there to make sure Marcus is successful. So what were some of the things that you had to do that was now completely different than, I guess, being in the entertainment or the front of entertainment space?
Yeah, it was. I didn't know it at the time, but it was literally like doing the job of an agent, right? I hadn't experienced and trying to flex negotiating skills, right? So
Mm,
I had to learn what that was. I had to figure out like who were good and bad buyers, like what were good and bad opportunities, and what made the most sense for what he wanted for his career. Like how
mm,
do I bring that to life, right? Like he was coming out with the book. He had his wine brand Flow, and it was all about connecting everything to each other, like the music, the wine, the book, the stories, like all of that into a package, right? So we go back to branding, we go back to marketing, which I found myself learning and doing a bit, but the job of actually like booking was something new to me, right? And I had to like try and fail and try and learn and realize like how many emails it would take to just do one thing, like one booking, how
mm,
many phone calls it would take. I remember I actually booked him one time at the FBI, which is a very, very like random fact. But I have a picture somewhere, I guess on my Facebook or Instagram, where I took a picture right outside the office, and that was great because it was something where they were looking exactly for someone like Marcus to come in for that specific event, and it was about building those relationships. And I think that in and of itself was a good segue into being interviewed at UTA and talking about that experience, because
mm,
it's
mm.
exactly what agents do. We procure opportunities for our clients in our respective areas, and for him it was me being a speaking agent for him.
Right, right, and that's interesting. So what makes a good and bad buyer? So yeah, explain that, because I mean, I would think, you mean, is that based on the venue or the type of venue for Marcus? Is that what you mean?
I should say more so, good, cautious versus someone that has a little bit more experience, right? Like
Okay.
someone, someone who has a prior history of working with certain talents, so they kind of know exactly how to go about certain asks and requests and things that they need, these type of things, and you
Okay.
don't necessarily have to educate them as much.
Oh, I
um
see.
I mean, to some degree, at that point, I'm humble enough to say I needed education too.
Right, right.
But you're kind of stepping into a certain space where you have to have a level of confidence because you're representing someone on their behalf. You want to make sure that they're presented in the best light. So having the most information about what you need for your client, and then what they will do, what they won't do, what's negotiable, etc. And some buyers and folks that are looking to book some of your clients are knowledgeable about all these things, and it's an easy conversation, and others are not. And I think that that's the things that I was kind of figuring out on the fly. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily I don't think I had too many misses. Right, and I was swinging a lot, and hitting some home runs and hitting some some in the parks. But other than that, I think that's what I would say to like good or bad buyers. It's more so
Okay,
just
okay.
how they're coming to the table.
So did you have an event where you, if you could tell this story or if you can remember, where you kind of tried to back slowly, just back out of the space because it didn't turn out the way you had, worked on?
Fortunately, no. And that's also because my time working with him in that capacity, wasn't too long lived. Right, I
Okay.
had maybe just 3 or 4 months like within that role.
Okay.
And so what we were able to do was great, and then came an opportunity that I took, and then moved to New York for UTA. But um yeah, fortunately, there weren't too many that we kind of managed expectations, on everybody's side, and we kind of knew what we were walking into. And at the same time, he's a great person, right? Outside of being an amazing, talented, musician. So it's when you have a client like that, it's pretty easy to have a good go at things, even when it's not the most ideal scenarios for what you'd rather be in, right? When it's
Right.
the room, or the type of people, or the how much the money is, or what have you.
Okay. And so then, so that was short lived, and you decided to switch to comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it was music before comedy, right?
Okay.
And I keep losing my light here.
Okay.
That's what happens when you work at places that just care
They
about you,
don't
care,
expect you to be there,
they
right?
care about the environment. I just
I hear you. Oh yeah, take your time.
but I think that at that journey, right, from DC area right after I graduated, and then going into New York, starting at one of the biggest talent agencies, and coming from the mailroom on up to the to an agent now, right?
Hmm.
Is it feels like a very long time, and however, I'm still at the beginning of it all. And I came in as a music trainee, right? There's trainee programs here at UTA. I came in as
Okay.
a music touring trainee in 2017. Luckily, I was only in the mailroom for maybe four weeks or so, and I was able to get on the desk pretty quickly and start assisting two agents in music who were booking pop and indie and soft rock music, but we're also booking things that they felt the industry was going into, like the entertainment landscape was moving towards, which is like live podcast shows, and
Hmm.
and shows with digital creators and other niche conventions and expos where you were serving what was like a deep and rooted community that was ready to experience something in a live space. And so like that was my start on like their desk and assisting them and understanding from soup to nuts, like what a deal was and how tours got built and routed and negotiated, and the different types of rooms and different types of deals, and how to like think about a festival versus like just like a proper like show, and like all of these things, right, that you kind of have to know before you got to
Hmm.
crawl before you walk before you run. So it takes a long time, specifically within that area, to learn all the intricacies, to feel like you have it, and you know it like the back of your hand. So a lot of long nights here, and then, just to some degree, if you want it and you want to like learn it in and out, like you have to like put in that time. So I was like happy to do those things because I knew like I'd be here. At some point I made the decision I would be here, right?
Hmm.
It's just a matter of time. But
Okay.
I didn't know I'd be in comedy, right?
Okay.
You
Oh,
know,
so basically, UTA is one of your goals where you wanted to end up at that agency, and you figured out how to do that.
right. Well, the opportunity came from, again, doing the most I could to learn and meet people. I went fall 2016 to the Billboard conference and awards out in LA. it's actually funny. I think I'm going to be staying at the hotel that that kind of started this all in a few weeks.
Okay.
But and I went to an agency roundtable, and there were hip hop and R&B agents there. And again, I was interested in music. I wanted to stay on the music tip, so I was talking to them about what they did. I was letting them know what I was into when I was doing. Did my follow ups, and one of them, UTA, passed my resume along, and maybe a few weeks later, I got a call to interview. And so again, I'm stepping into it not exactly knowing what music agents do on a day to day and what like an assistant does, but enough conversations, enough consideration about it. I got enough information to really continue to go along that path. And I think coming into UTA, it was like the next big step is what I needed to be able to like start to like make inroads where I needed to, right? Like it could have been a step to going to work at a label. It could have been a step to
Hmm.
going to an artist management company, or it could have been a step to just becoming an actual music touring agent, right?
Okay.
At some point, I made enough. I had enough conversations. I experienced enough to know that what we were doing with those non-traditional talent, those podcasters, the creators, was that gap that it wasn't being filled by anyone. And if anything in this business, you need to learn how to be indisposable and start to, go in the places that people aren't, but you have a vision for, knowing that will be the future. And so we put the time in. We started to build up a roster of our own that ended up, speaking enough to the success of it. And then at the top of 2020, we transitioned into the comedy department, and it ended up being the best thing to happen for myself because it allowed for that trajectory and that elevation to come much much quicker because there was more support, there was more guidance, there was more
Mm.
opportunities coming just from being under this group and under the helm of someone who would really take it to the next height.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. So I love that because I what I heard in all of that was one, networking, which is things that we really need to do, and then just getting in the door and then allowing your, I guess for lack of a better word, your talent and your skills to take over, where you and now creating a space where you're indispensable, as you had mentioned. So,
Hmm.
so what are some of the challenges that you face as a talent agent of color? I'm not sure, if it's based on who you represent, but I'd love to hear that, journey because
Hmm.
when you, I know when we met over the summer and you told me you're a talent agent for comedy, I'm like, oh, I mean, I never even thought of that as being a job because you figure the comics do all of that themselves or they just do they just go to they try to like on Seinfeld, they go to the spot and get booked and there you go. So I'd love to hear that part of it.
For sure. I mean, I think I stepped into the agency world, and I guess really like the industry, right? It was my first like big job within the industry, and so I didn't realize how like little of me there were around, right? And like,
Mm,
even in either like just overall, right? And that was a shock, and operating in a space where you kind of feel like you may not be particularly understood at the first go round, maybe having to use extra words to educate others, people making certain assumptions about maybe what your interests are in terms of talent, in terms of lifestyle, etc. Like all those things are things that honestly like happened at Georgetown, and what it was a bit of a precursor to what would happen in like the corporate space, the real world. And so I to some degree think I'm thankful for like that experience to having that because it let me come in here and be prepared to be able to kind of stand into like what like I know to be true and like who I am and not be put into a box. I think that that's a challenge is making sure people don't put you into what they believe your specific expertise are. Um, and but also like if anything is right, just owning it and saying it's because of like who you are, your upbringing, your experience, and what your particular tastes are, right? I think like I have a very eclectic roster, and I think it skews black comedy. It's it's podcasters, it's digital creators, it was
hmm
kids and family programming. Like what I can speak about a lot of different areas of entertainment, a lot of different genres, and a lot of different types of people, and different forms of live shows. Right? It's because that was a competency that I've been building for 6+ years. And
Hmm.
so being within this space, people will automatically, especially if they start to see your roster, if they start to see a few people like you represent, they'll start to paint a picture of you. So it's up to you to be able to set the tone. When you, again, when you enter a room, when you
Hmm.
enter a Zoom, or
Gotcha. Gotcha.
right, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and to some degree your representation, right? I'm hoping that I see more people, within comedy, that are agents that look like me, and that come from similar backgrounds, right? But for now there aren't that many, and I think the challenge is being able to do the best job as possible, because you do feel like you're, you know, trying to create a path and trying to create the right one, right? You want to be the best representation and be, as perfect as you can be, which is super impossible. But you also, want to make sure you're representing people that you also love, and also are a fan of in the right way. And your reputation is everything here.
Right.
So it's
Right.
uh, it's important that people speak about you in spaces that, when you're not there in the best light. And I think that it rings even more true when you're, a talent agent of color.
Okay. Well, what do you look for with talent? Because I got a couple of jokes that I think I could take on the road. Look, I'm so short I can do chin ups on a towel rack. Um, I don't know if you heard of the Smurfs, but back in the day, but you know, they used to call me Smigger. So look, I could be telling those couple of those jokes, and hey, I may take it on the road. So what do you think?
um Not by particular taste, but there's somebody for you. I'll give you
Might
that.
be. So yeah, what do you basically what do you look for uh when you're looking for talent, especially in the comic space?
It's so subjective. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's kind of the reason why I just gave my answer, right? I think that, just because I'm not liking something doesn't mean the next person won't, right? And to
Hmm.
some degree, like if the room loves something and the room speaking, the crowd is speaking to it, right? It's something that, is there's an audience for, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just that, right? It's not for you, but it's for a lot of other people. And that's, you stepping outside of yourself and kind of looking at the bigger picture, and being
Okay.
able to look at it from there, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Sure, there's all these things that people probably talk about, and you probably see on maybe even these judging shows that are on TV, right? Stage presence, and
Hmm. Hmm.
all the skill sets that comedians are continuing building, while they're going up every night in these cities. And
Gotcha.
but at the end of the day, it's also about building your following, building your community, right? Making sure that you're kind of like your work ethic is there, and you're really honing in on the craft that is stand up. It's one of the hardest and most personal and vulnerable art crafts in the world, right?
No, you're right. Absolutely. Okay. So I got some things to work on. Okay. Gotcha. Um,
Even you.
so couple more things. So I'd love to hear who are some of the up and coming comics that folks should be looking out for?
I mean, I'm only going to say the ones that are under our roof.
I mean, we
You know,
wouldn't know, so it's all good. But I mean, yeah, but I mean, look, you've obviously um, have an eye, but and it's always great to which is one thing I don't think we do enough. We don't get behind the up and coming
yeah,
comics.
yeah,
We'll be there when they're already stars and things like that. But I'm sure they'd love to get us supporting the shows when they're before they're the big stars. So yeah, I'd love to hear
yeah.
some of the people that you represent.
Yeah, yeah. I'll shout out a couple of people that that I'm working with, developing, rising, et cetera, and then a couple others. Right. I think I post about this all the time, and I think a lot of people know. I represent Desi Banks, who I just think is a superstar, and he's having a really great run on his theater tour right now, his first
Mhm.
headline theater tour. And for those out in LA, he's playing the Novo on Saturday, October 14th. And he just got it all right. Some people have that gift, have that it factor. um
Mhm.
he has it. So I'm super proud to be in business with him. um, I would say there's a younger guy, Isaiah Kelly, right, who I think is also very talented. He comes from a family of comedians. If you look up Isaiah Kelly, Isiah, and Kelly, Kelly,
Okay. Okay.
based down LA, but also super funny, and really starting to, like, people are starting to pay attention, and I think that that's wonderful. I think that when you're in your towns, right? Like wherever the local comedy club is, just check out the calendar for like the next month or the next couple months, and go to a show. I think that a lot of my friends, probably from back home or etc., like they don't go to too many comedy until they go to a comedy show and realize how fun it is. And it can be very fun, especially on at the places that are homes for it, right?
Right. Right.
In your different cities, maybe you're in a major city and maybe you have a funny bone, or you have an improv, or you have a comedy zone, right, in some of your cities, or just that local comedy club. I would say just spend the night out. Try to maybe you can call and ask like which ones are the showcase nights, and have a good laugh. Um, and I think that some folks are more podcast listeners, and the podcast live events like area is just bustling right now, right? From back when 2017, 2018, when we were in it, to where it was
Mhm.
like only a couple genres were working within podcasts. Now multiple ones are working. And I think that it's really nice to see if you just have a dedicated audience and a message and you're speaking to them super well. Then, like, I think we saw that with The Read. It was like one of like the first biggest touring podcasts that kind of came out. And I represent Dead Ass Podcast with Kadeen and Devell Ellis, who I think are obviously superstars in their own right, but actually like kill it in the live area as well.
Mhm.
In their
Mhm.
tours. So that just got announced and is coming to a few select cities in February next year.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
So I can go on and on. I mean, my
Okay.
my, my, my whatever DMs, Facebook Messenger, all that stuff is open if you want some
Right.
recommendations. I think it
Okay.
really depends on your taste. I just saw Chelsea Handler do her sold out show at the Beacon Theater here in New York, and she's a comedy icon. I think a massive presentation from her, and she's so down to earth and so great. So I think if you're able to see even those like top folks, as much as we talk about the rising and developing ones, you
Mhm.
check out these big shows, and see someone do it on the highest level. It gives you an appreciation for those people that are trying to get there, right?
Right.
That are that
Right.
are that are doing taking the steps and taking the falls, and bombing at clubs. That, like, everybody did that to be able to get to where they are. Kevin
Right.
Hart talks about it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I mean, Chelsea is a great storyteller, super funny. She just started her tour, so check out her Little Big Bitch tour. That's what it's called.
Okay. Yeah. That she is funny. I like her.
Yeah,
Well, this has been great. And hey, look, no technical difficulties tonight with the
yeah.
low lights, but that's all good. Um, and I really am glad we were able to do this because I think I really applaud your journey, and it's a holistic journey, So, and the fact that you've really been working hard, so I really appreciate that. So I always like to leave or end the show with this question because I know that we as brothers work hard a lot, and we may tend to focus on that more, maybe more than most, and probably endure a lot of things. But I always like to ask, as a black man, how are you feeling right now?
I'm overwhelmed for sure.
Okay, and
I'm
why
over,
is that?
my birthday's on Saturday, and
Okay.
and I'm turning 30.
Oh,
So
30. Okay, the big three. Oh, okay.
the big 3-0. So there's a lot of preparation for that. There's a lot of thinking that I've been doing over the past probably like 2 to 3 months very intensely.
Okay.
And as much as I'm happy about it. I think I'm only anxious because I know that there's future success to come, and it's just about kind of what that journey looks like to get there. So it's exciting as much as it is daunting, as much as it is inspirational just for like my own goals.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
all of that in a nutshell is
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I could just say this being 26 years past that, um, that you're right where you want to be, man. And so I think as long as you keep putting those goals on a dartboard or on a notepad, and visiting those goals every day, you'll get to where you want to go. Because I think you're already on that path. And what I like about you is that you had no problems pivoting where you needed to. You started at one place and maybe step back a little bit to get to where you wanted to go on the upstream. And I think you're gonna rise. So just appreciate the journey that you're on and enjoy your birthday, brother.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. I started telling people that and I forgot that I used to say. I started saying this and what was being positively overwhelmed. I think a lot of the things that consume me are great things, but to be able to manage them is difficult at times, right?
Right.
So a lot of things that I'm worried about are actually like all exciting. So I have to say that.
And yeah, and then I guess in closing, and just make sure you just reach out for support. If you need it, reach out. So and you'll and I think that's what we don't do enough. We don't reach out to, hey bro, I just want to talk about this thing or run this by you. Can you do that? Because I know Harrison, that's a brother. I love him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure I'm sure he will have no problems giving you an ear. So there you go.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, man. Thank you. And I appreciate
You're
the opportunity being on here. It's been fun, and thank you for allowing me to share my story.
you're welcome. All right, thank you. This is another edition of Black Men Speak podcast, and we look forward to uh, the next um, the next journey. Have a great night.